Hey, fifth grade, for today's Writer's Workshop lesson, we're going to be talking about figurative language, or two things at once. I think you'll see what I mean once we get started. The first thing that you're going to need to do, though, is you're going to need to grab that ELA reference folder and turn to page 21. I saved this poetry lesson for last because it's a big one and a tough one. But if you can create figurative language that works, if you can say two things at once, it's guaranteed to transform your poetry. Let's begin with some straight background information by turning in your ELA reference folder to page 21, where you'll find these notes or this reference page. I'm just going to kind of walk through this with you. Figurative language are two things at once. Literal is language that is true to fact. It uses words in accordance with their actual literal meanings. For example, my dog is a carnivore. It means exactly that my dog eats meat. There's no hidden meaning. I'm not saying anything creative about my dog by saying this. This is just a fact, and it means exactly what I say. Figurative language makes comparisons between unrelated things or ideas in order to show something about a subject. For example, in the kitchen, when I cook, my dog is a tap dancer. Now, if this were literal language, it would mean that the dog is strapping on some tap dancing shoes and putting on a performance in the kitchen while this owner cooks dinner. Now, that's not really what's going on, so the meaning is figurative. What really is going on is the dog is probably excited about something yummy smelling, being cooked, and so it's getting excited, and perhaps there's a wooden floor, and it's kind of prancing about in place, which creates that tapping sound. And so by saying that the dog is a tap dancer, the poet or the writer is able to tell you a whole lot more about the dog without going into a lot of details. So by giving you that picture of the dog being a tap dancer, they're explaining what's actually going on, if you understand that it's figurative language. There are three kinds of figurative language that we're going to talk about today, and I don't want to confuse you, but all three are metaphors. However, we're not going to call all three metaphors. There's a couple of specific types of metaphors that we're going to talk about, and so we're going to call them something different. So the first one is just a regular metaphor, and it is a Greek word, and it means literally transference. So the writer transfers qualities of one thing to another thing. A metaphor has two parts. A equals B. Something is something else. The B part, the something else, shows how the poet feels about or perceives the A part. For example, thumb, the odd, friendless boy raised by 4 ants. Thumb is the part A. We're saying that the thumb is something else. It's an odd, friendless boy raised by 4 ants. Okay? It also lets us know how Philip, the writer, feels about the thumb. Is the thumb really a boy? No, it's not. But what he's saying is it's different than the other fingers on your hand, and the other fingers on your hand are the ones doing all of the guiding and instructing, and it doesn't have any friends because it's way over here alone. So he's making a statement about the thumb by using this metaphor. A simile is from the Latin word similes, which means similar. It's a kind of metaphor that uses like or as to compare two things. A is like B. So in this example, thunder threatens like a sound that rolls around and around in a mean dog's throat. Thunder is the part A, and we're saying that thunder is like the sound that rolls around and around in a mean dog's throat when he's growling. So by saying that thunder threatens in that way, we're saying A is like B. And so again, a growling dog is a threatening thing, and this is how the poet is viewing thunder. And she's able to give you a more vivid image of how she feels about thunder or what she thinks about thunder by using that simile. Personification comes from the Greek word prosopa, meaning face or mask. It's a metaphor that gives human or physical qualities to an object, animal, or idea. For example, the yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes. So the fog itself is not an object that is alive or that we would think of as having a back to rub upon window panes in the first place. I'm not sure if T.S. Eliot, I believe T.S. Eliot was comparing it to a cat and the way that a cat creeps in, and you've seen a cat rub its back upon things and kind of move that way. And so he's describing the movement of the fog by comparing it to a cat, using personification to do so. All right, we're going to keep going here. The poet Donald Hall once said, "The new metaphor is a miracle, like the creation of life." As a famously literal writer, I so agree with him. When I can exercise the power of figurative language, it feels like a miracle. It's that hard for me to look at the world through the eyes of a metaphor. But I also know, as a reader of poetry, there's nothing more satisfying than the right metaphor. That feeling of surprise and delight, that moment when I'm reading along and think, of course, makes me happy to be a human and alive on this planet. I practically swoon when I read poetry by Sylvia Plath, who was the queen of metaphor. A work like her poem Metaphors, with 13 or 14 packed into 9 short lines, makes me giddy. Emily Dickinson's There's a Certain Slant of Light, Elizabeth Bishop's The Fish, Langston Hughes' Dreams, and Richard Wilbur's Digging for China. These and other poems with rich figurative language sharpen my vision and change my perspectives on the world around me and on my own experiences too. Aristotle wrote that the greatest thing by far is to be the master of metaphor, but he continued, "It is one thing that cannot be learned from others." So I can teach you what a metaphor is. I can show you some examples written by students, but I won't be able to teach you how to think metaphorically. That ability can only come from your own unique visions and perceptions. So while this is a mini lesson on what good writing is and what works well in poems, this is going to be something that you guys have to play around and experiment with. It's not something that I can necessarily teach you how to do. What is Jonathan writing about here in Opening the Rift? Let's take a look at this for a second. I think I went too far. Here we go. Take a look at Jonathan's poem, Opening the Rift, which is an extended metaphor. As I read, follow along and ponder. What is this place and what is the rift? Opening the rift. A rift opens to another part of my brain, the part that drifts from person to place to purple elephants, to the worst possible nightmare, and somehow it feels normal. A diverse world opens to me, a world where my imagination soars. Wheels turns upside down, spins. I am sucked into the new existence like entering a black hole, a vast void in outer space. It is the best escape route ever made. In minutes, I'm in a different universe altogether, away from my life, for what seems like a lifetime. What is Jonathan writing about here? Opening the Rift is a poem about dreaming. Read it again to yourself now that you know that the best escape route ever made is Jonathan's metaphor for his dream life. He discovered what his mind could do, but for other students who struggle, as I do, to cast ideas as metaphors, I have learned one helpful bit of advice, and that's to start with personification. Before we jump to that, though, I do want us to go back in. And now that you know this poem is about his dream life, just take a look. A rift opens to another part of my brain. So this is him going to sleep and entering his dream world. The part that drifts from person to place to purple elephants to the worst possible nightmare, and somehow it feels normal. So it's very normal for us to dream when we sleep. And it's also very normal for us to have bad dreams and good dreams and dreams that don't even make sense. A diverse world opens to me, a world where my imagination soars, wheels, turns upside down, and spins. I am sucked into the new existence, like entering a black hole, a vast void in outer space. It is the best escape route ever made. In minutes, I'm in a different universe altogether, away from my life for what seems like a lifetime. That poem probably makes a lot more sense now that you know it's about a dream. Again, like I said, he was able to use metaphor very easily, and it totally works in this poem. But if you're like me and you struggle to do something of that nature, you might start with personification. So let's take a look here. JT, another seventh grader, was dying to write metaphorically like his hero, the poet William Stafford. JT's subject was ocean seals, but ocean seal metaphors would not come. By the time his teacher stopped a conference with him one day in writing workshop, he was so frustrated he was banging his head on his desk. He showed her his best effort so far. It read, "I watch as the lifeless bodies lie motionless on the rocks, the sun glimmering off their rubbery bodies." Okay, so his teacher said, "Well, it's sensory, JT. I can see it." He said, "But that's not enough. I want it to be metaphorical, for the seals to be something else like Stafford does it. All I've got after 4 starts is their bodies were rubbery." Well, let's try another tack here. What if the seals on the rocks were a bunch of people? Who would they be? His teacher asked. Could they be a big family out there on the rocks? A bunch of old men, women at a spa, a convention, a rock group? A light broke on JT's face. "A convention," he said, "like the ones my dad goes to, but a convention of seals." Here's the final draft. Read along with me. Convention of seals. The convention of seals gathers on a large rock. The president barks the loudest, trying to get control of the members. All is silent except for the president barking out tonight's agenda. Who will be the next to pretend to be playful and cute for the gawking tourist? Who's the next professional seal? The president barks out the candidates one by one. The members bark out their support one by one. When all is said and done and the seal is chosen, the convention is adjourned and the members swim off into the night. Metaphor was possible for JT when he approached it as personification, when he sought to give a non-human subject human qualities. So he basically turned his seals into people and had them doing people-y kinds of things. And so then it worked in his poem. He could use metaphor that way. All right, take a look at 2 more examples of personification. You'll notice I removed the titles from these poems. The subjects of both are inanimate objects. Can you figure out what they are? Read along with me. Seemingly docile, the battered creature is motionless until summoned. Then it raises a serpentine neck, top-heavy with its metallic head, and spying an opening in the flank of the other beast, it charges. Guided by a human master, it smashes into the larger creature. Once secure, it fills the beast's organs with poison. The acrid odor of the liquid shimmers in the air. When finished, it withdraws its head and rests. The stationary dancer, I'm going to jump over to this next poem. Sorry, I was getting in a hurry. The stationary dancer stands tall on the pedestal and watches over everything. Longing to move her feet, the dancer sways and bends, but her legs are stuck in the sinking quicksand. She wishes she could walk in her blue shoes and that her yellow body wasn't trapped into flickering forever. Okay, so these are both about an object, an everyday object that you could see in just about anybody's daily life. So what I'd like for you to do is try and figure out what you thought this poem was about and what you thought this poem was about. And then when we move to the next slide, you'll see the title and it will reveal what each of those poems was about. Again, this was taking an inanimate object, something that's not alive, and giving it qualities of a person. So I'm going to go ahead and click. The first poem was about a gas pump, and the second poem was about a candle. Jed's poem is titled Gas Pump, Emily's is called Candle Dancer. Now that you know the titles, read them again to yourself and discover how they work. What do you notice? How did Jed and Emily combine sensory details about the gas pump and the candle comparisons? So in gas pump, it's acting like the gas pump is a beast, and it charges into another beast, seeing an opening in the flank. That's the gas door, or where you put gas into the car. It charges guided by a human master because, of course, your hand is going to have to put the handle of the gas pump into the actual car. Once secure, it fills the beast's organs with poison, the acrid odor of the liquid. I know when I put gas in my car, it looks like the air around it shimmers. That's what he's describing there. So along with personification, we're seeing some sensory details that allow us to see it now that we know that it's actually a poem about a gas pump. Okay? When it is finished, it withdraws its head and rests, and that's when the person takes the gas pump or the gas nozzle out of the car and puts it back on the gas pump. Candle Dancer does the same thing. The stationary dancer stands tall on the pedestal and watches over everything. So it's a candle and a candlestick. Longing to move her feet, the dancer sways and bends, but her legs are stuck in the sinking quicksand. Well, as the candle burns down, it gets smaller, and so it may give the illusion that it's sinking in what this poet is calling quicksand. She wishes she could walk in her blue shoes, that her yellow body wasn't trapped into flickering forever. So the flickering is referring to the flame, but then we also get some sensory details. Her yellow body, so it's a yellow candle, and her blue shoes, so it's a blue candlestick. So we got sensory details, but we also had personification throughout. All right. So last thing I want you to do today is to start a new list in the territory section of your ELA reference folder. That says CA Binder, but I'm talking about your ELA reference folder. The heading will be Potential Things, Ideas, and Phenomena to Personify. This week at home, become a seeker of personification subjects. Look for things you're interested in bringing to life. Think about concepts that could be given human qualities, like hunger. Consider natural phenomena like wind or fog or rain. See pets or wild animals through new eyes as beings with thoughts, feelings, and motivations. Under the heading, make a list of 10 or 12 possibilities, and if one of your ideas grabs you and won't let go, by the way, that's personification, draft it. So underneath your heart map, there's a spot for potential things, ideas, and phenomena to personify. You're going to go to that page and you're just going to start a list of things that are not people or humans that you could give human qualities to that you could possibly use in your poetry. We'll talk more about this when we get back from Thanksgiving break also. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. Go ahead and continue to work on that list of things that you could personify, and let me know if you need help with anything or if you have questions. I'll talk to you later. Bye.